Global bureaucracies want to control your free speech. Is this a conspiracy theory, or is it the censorship industrial complex? Hello there, you 6.4 million awakening wonders. Subscribe right now. We gotta get that number up, baby. Particularly if independent media is ever to confront the machine, the gargantuan monster that wants you distracted, that wants your mind filled with pipe toxicity straight out of the farting arse of the beast. That is exactly why me and Twitter Files heroes Michael Shellenberger and Matt Taibbi staged the inaugural Censorship Industrial Complex Movement event. That's right, if we're ever going to fight this machine that wants to introduce new censorship legislation in the EU, Australia, Canada, America, Ireland, basically anywhere where people could have free speech, laws to shut it down are being introduced. Not because of hate speech or disinformation, although those are the reasons they always use, but have you noticed elsewhere in government that they don't seem to care about inequality, poverty, small businesses failing, people being crushed and destroyed? If they cared about hate, they wouldn't use hate as the fuel for their machine. If they cared about disinformation, they wouldn't try to fill your head with it all the time. Remember, turn on the notification bell right now. And if you want to see this in full, it's going to be up on the other platform that can't be named. There's a link in the description where free speech reigns supreme. Have a look at this part of the conversation with me, Matt Taibbi and Shellenberger. It's groundbreaking. They explain to me what the censorship industrial complex actually is, how it is psychopathic, how their work on the Twitter Files revealed that they're using behavioralist techniques that you are more akin to something that would take place in Silence of the Lambs than at the highest levels of government. You are not going to want to miss a single second of this conversation. Watch it in full at the other place where censorship is banned, and the rest of the interview will be up on Monday. Join our community. Join this movement. We need you. You will love this conversation. Two brilliant, committed journalists sharing the truth with you. Let me know in the comments if you've noticed how immersive and insidious the censorship industrial complex is. What's been censored of yours? What posts of yours have you seen shut down? Let me know.
And the other thing that I think is really important to point out, and is another Orwell concept, is doublethink. And this is the idea, how did Orwell define this? Basically, it's the idea of holding two ideas at the same time. He defined it as the act of holding simultaneously two opposite, individually exclusive ideas or opinions, and believing in both simultaneously and absolutely. Now, we do that. We do that constantly now. With news stories, things that were true yesterday turn out to be completely the opposite tomorrow, and people are totally fine with that. We just completely skip the fixing process. There's no stopping to say, oh, sorry, we got that wrong. We just move to freaking out about the next thing seamlessly. So just to take an example, it wasn't that long ago that we were told in no uncertain terms that the only suspect in the Nord Stream pipeline bombing was Russia itself. And just a couple of weeks ago, we were told by the same US government that they were actually aware since last June that this was planned by Ukrainians with the assent of the highest officials in the Ukrainian military. Now, I don't know what the true story is, but those two stories are completely different. And they don't stop and say, oh, well, we're sorry, let's resolve that, let's square this discrepancy. They just want you to forget. And there's no way for people to live normally with these contradictions and stay sane. The only thing they can do is live continuously in the moment, because that way you don't have to think about the past, you don't have to think about the future. You are sort of charged affirmatively to forget everything that you were told before, because it might turn out to contradict something they want to tell you tomorrow. So we live in the present continually, and in the present there are only two choices. So we are living in this very, very narrow intellectual world, and this is over and above the problem of authority that would come in later. If you somehow manage to get past all these obstacles and actually be an independent free thinker, like I think most of the people in this room are, then they're going to have censorship and other obstacles to try to stop you. But their aim is to prevent that from ever happening. And we saw that over and over in the Twitter Files. I think that's the lesson that I ended up taking away from it. And this is, I think, more than a speech crisis. It's a humanity crisis, and I just hope we're not too late to fix it.
The idea of perpetual and never-ending crisis being a precondition for authoritarianism is by its nature terrifying, as is the shift that a mechanic designed in order to deal with an apparently external threat being inverted to deal with an internal threat, particularly using some of the psychological critiques that have been touched upon. That indicates a kind of implosion that's difficult not to equate with pre-apocalyptic thinking. Furthermore, to see the figures, and I'm referring directly to both of you, of course, that would once have been cherished by identifiable legacy media outlets, even if they're glib, somewhat cultural artifacts like Rolling Stone, or legacy media outlets like the New York Times, that it's unthinkable that Matt Taibbi or Michael Shellenberger could reliably and consistently write for those kind of outlets. This too is an indication that things are changing, and they're just two examples. Of course, Chris Hedges has had a comparable trajectory, and most obviously perhaps Glenn Greenwald, who's gone from breaking the seismic stories around WikiLeaks and Snowden and Chelsea Manning to being a literal exile and pariah. These are all, I would say, significantly terrifying alterations and changes. Might I ask, if there is an underlying ideology here, because sometimes to hear the way that Matt has described it then, it just feels like a kind of utilization of a creation just because it's there. It has to be used. But I wonder, Michael, if the imperatives that undergird this new fast-moving, observably fast-moving trajectory towards authoritarianism, censorship, and centralization is primarily motivated by dominion, power, money, or is there something ideological and political taking place, or is it both? And if so, how do they intersect, please?
Yeah, I mean, this thing where I think that you guys have both just tapped into this sort of the central issue, which is that there is an authoritarian mentality among the leaders of the censorship industrial complex. I always think of this, do you guys know the Bourne movie, not the one with Matt Damon, but the other guy, and they go in to kill Rachel Weisz? You guys know what I'm talking about? Okay, everybody remembers that scene? It was Jeremy Renner, right? Do you remember the scene where like they go into her, I'm gonna spoil the movie for you guys if you haven't seen it, but there's like, I guess it's like CIA or FBI, and they go into the house and they're like trying to be like empathic with her because she's been through this trauma, and then they sit her down and then they just look at each other and they're like, now, and then they like try to kill her. And that's kind of the scene that has kept coming up in my mind as I'm like reading these documents and listening and like reading the things that people are saying. It's like, I feel like there's a lot of, like they're running an operation. You know, you feel like you look at these people. I wrote a piece about one person who's a former CIA fellow. I'm very sensitive about not wanting to personalize it, so I'm even hesitant to use this person's name, but I did write a whole piece about her. And, you know, it was like, her story was, she was just this hobbyist, you know, and I was just concerned about anti-vaxxers. And then, you know, and then the next thing you know, I was advising Obama on fighting ISIS. And I just remember being like, I don't think it works like that. You know, like, I think it's like, these are like really hierarchical military intelligence organizations. And that this is a person who came out of, you know, and I don't know if she, you know, was recruited out of the NSA, which does all the spy satellites and whatnot. But, you know, this particular kind of a peculiar career. And then she's been, I think, one of the most important intellectual architects of the censorship industrial complex. And, you know, you would listen to her and it'd be like talking about like reducing harm in the real world and using very progressive language, like that's like language of compassion. And we have to reduce harm. I mean, that's been a big part of it. We have to reduce hatred in the society. And then it just feels like that moment from, you know, the Bourne movie where it's like, and then we have to, you know, fight the disinformation. And so, you know, I have to say, I think like that seems to be, I mean, that seems to be like the undercurrent, is that I think that that what brings us all together is a kind of suspicion of authority. I mean, my dad had, not only did he have a Beetle, a VW Bug, we had the question authority sticker on the car. I mean, that was who we were. And so for me, that was a part of it, and I think one of the delightful parts of it is that there's people in this anti-censorship movement, this free speech movement, who, you know, like there's a guy that had blocked me because we had been in this huge fight about nuclear power, which is something that I support. A lot of the folks that are very anti-authoritarian are anti-nuclear, and I actually asked him recently to stop blocking me on Twitter, and he did, because we're on the same side of this. And so, but I do feel like, yeah, that seems like that's a big part of it, is that if there's an ideology, it's just some of it's like just questioning authority and, you know, being able to have a conversation and ask hard questions of people and not kind of not wanting to be in a situation of just following orders.
I love it how Matt Taibbi uses George Orwell as a reference and Michael Shellenberger uses Jason Bourne. They're worlds apart, those two men. We'll be showing part 2 over at the other place on Monday. Join us there. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at this one. It's from the stream of Stay Free, our fantastic show that we broadcast 5 days a week. It's magnificent. And here's another video just like this one. Remember, turn on the notification bell and subscribe. I want to see them numbers going up. More important than any of that is that you please stay free.